This game might be one of the best games I've ever played in my life. Not that I've been gaming for too long, I think I'm going on like 5 years or something now, but still, in my 5 years of gaming, this might be one of the best games I've ever played. I have come across very few games that are this creative, this polished, and just this good. Come along as I tell you all about it in today's review. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Sumi here, and today we're taking a look at What Remains of Edith Finch. Now, normally I go into like an essay type format here where I talk about the game, what it's about, what the story is, and my thoughts on it. But as I was writing this review, I couldn't write it. It was really hard for me to put into words how I feel about this game. And I was like, okay, well, why don't we try something different? Just a little bit different. And we make this more of a podcast-esque. So instead of like scripting everything out like I usually do, I've written down a bunch of different notes and I'm just gonna talk to you about them because I could not find a way to articulate them on paper. So we're gonna talk about What Remains of Edith Finch. It's a game that came out in 2017 and it was released by the indie developers Giant Sparrow. It's an interactive story game, and unlike a lot of other story games that I've come across that are interactive, this one doesn't have alternate endings. This kind of has like its one ending. It doesn't even really have choices for you to pick from in the game like a lot of others do. A lot of choice-based video games are like, you get, maybe two, like Life is Strange, or a million, like Detroit Become Human. This one kind of has like one route that you go down and it just kind of takes you on the journey. And so you can't change the outcome of the game no matter what you try to do. And this game is so incredible for so many reasons. And I'm like upset about the fact that I didn't play this game earlier because I love story games. Part of what got me into video games at all was that I realized it was a different form of storytelling. I love stories, I love books, movies, TV shows. And when I found out that video games weren't just all shooters, I was like, wait, there's like options here? I was so excited. So when I found out, I was recommended What Remains of Edith Finch years ago. So like it was so long ago, and it took me until last week to actually play it. Last week being the like third week of March of 2025. So 5 years late, but that's okay. And I'm upset that it took me this long because it's gotta be one of the best examples of what good storytelling looks like. And I guess when it comes to storytelling, there's a lot of different ways that you can do it, and there's no like right way to do storytelling, but I think this is a really good example of what storytelling can be. And that I think is just something that is so very cool. So let's talk about the story. Let's talk about the story of What Remains of Edith Finch. I'm gonna try to summarize it for you to the best of my ability. But apparently, since I played the game, I've discovered there's a lot of discourse about what this game is about or how to interpret it or stuff like that. So I'm going to tell you what the game is, and then we can talk about all the rest of that after. But in the game, you begin as a young boy Christopher as he travels to a small island with this journal that's written by his late mother. From there, actually, we are not the boy anymore. We're Edith, his mother, and she's coming back to her old family generational home after, I think it said like five or 6 years since leaving. I think she was like 11 when she left, and she was 17 coming back. And she's essentially trying to write this journal to her son, because there's this thing with this family where they all tend to die really young, and no one really knows why. Her great-grandma Edie always said it was like a generational curse where the family just was gonna die, and that would suck. And no one really knew how to solve it, no one really knew how to stop it, but that's just kind of what happened, is everyone would die in either really early or just strange and unusual circumstances. And so Edith came back to basically write a journal to her son, talking about the family, talking about what had happened to everybody else, so that he would have something to remember her by, because she wasn't sure if she was actually going to live all that long either. Spoiler alert, she doesn't. Awesome. And so she's going through this house, and she is essentially wandering through all of the different rooms of her relatives and learning the stories as told by them. So one of the things that I found really amazing about this game is the way that it tells each of these stories. And it doesn't go into detail about every single person in the family, because there's a lot of them, but for the people that it does, every single segment, I call them segments, every story of the families is told in a different way, which I think is so cool. So like the very first one is this girl Molly, and her whole thing is that she like was sent to bed without dinner, and she was so hungry, and so she was eating everything, like I'm talking tube of toothpaste, everything, eating the gerbil food, everything. Almost thought about eating her pet fish, didn't quite get there. But because she's starving, she sees like a bird outside, and so she's like, oh my gosh, that bird. But then she turns into a cat, which I was like, sorry, what? Because I thought we were kind of rooted in reality. No. So she turns into a cat, she eats the bird, and then she turns into like an owl and a shark and a monster, and then eventually she becomes like the monster under her bed that's going to kill her. And I still to this day don't really understand how Molly died. Apparently a lot of people don't. There's a lot of theories about what killed Molly. Some people think food poisoning because she like ate a tube of toothpaste. Others think she starved to death. No one really knows what happened to the girl. But it was like the first introduction to what these generational stories look like, and it was really quite fascinating and really cool to play through, and I thought that was really neat. And then as you continue, after, oh gosh, who's after Molly? There's like there's so many people in this story, but a couple of the notable ones that I'll mention, because I don't want to spoil like the whole thing, because what's the fun in that? Also, if any of you out there are gonna play it, I played without any prior knowledge about what the game was about or what the gameplay was like, and so I really recommend doing that too, because it's really cool to experience for the first time for yourself. But there's like a little boy on a swing, and you swing and you swing, and then he jumps off a cliff and flies away. Yes, he flies away. Or there's a girl, Barbara, who was like in her house with her boyfriend, and she's like a failing child actor kind of thing, and her fans come and eat her alive. So that's a thing. And then there's like the uncle that lives in the basement who gets run over by a train, and that's awesome. There's like all of these different stories that are very different, but they're all told in very different ways. So the section with the little boy on the swing, all of the dialogue in that section is actually taken from a writing from his brother, his twin brother, who was writing about how his brother will be remembered. And so all of the dialogue doesn't actually come from the little boy who dies, it's from his brother who lived on, which is crazy. Also, those two were forced to live in, well, I guess the boy whose brother died, he had to stay in their room, their joint room, and their parents kept all of the dead boy's stuff, like his bed, his toys, his decorations, like all, but like roped it off. So this kid has to sleep in this room with like all of this stuff reminding him of his dead brother, which personally I think is like emotional torture. But far be it from me to criticize the Finches, my bad. But yeah, so that was crazy. And then with Barbara, with the fans, it's told in like comic book style, where like Edith is reading a comic book, and it comes to life, and we like hear the narration from the dude in the comic, and then sometimes it's playable, like we can go through and we can move her around in the comic, which is really cool. I think that's amazing. And then like you come out of it back to Edith. It's crazy. One of the really cool and really sad ones was later on. It's this little boy, I think his name was George, and it's this like 2-year-old, almost 2. He's almost 2 years old, and you play as his toy frog in the bathtub. And so you like play with this frog, you play as the frog, and you like swim around and you jump on stuff and you're knocking stuff into the tub, until you knock off you knock the tap open, and then the kid drowns. Less fun. Also, quick criticism of that. The music they used in that is copyrighted. So if anyone like is gonna make content out of that, just like be aware you're gonna get noted for that. I put in a dispute to be like, a lot of other people are using this in their content, please. So I'll come back and let you know if I didn't get copyright stricken for that, but it will get flagged, so just be aware. There's also this other character late in the game whose name was Lewis Finch, which is Edith's brother, and his section was one of the coolest in my opinion, because it's like Oh, there's so many cool things about this game. But the character of Lewis is Edith's brother, who is just going through it. He's going through a really rough time. I don't think it's really explained why. He just wasn't doing great, and he was working at this like fish cannery, where he takes the fish and he cuts off his head and he throws it on the conveyor belt, and that's his job. But because he was doing that, he was also like daydreaming. And so you play not just as Lewis doing the fish cannery stuff, but also Lewis in the daydream. So you're like actually doing two things at once. It was really, really cool. But then the daydream goes bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it goes from like a 2D thing to a 3D thing. And then it goes from just 3D, like third person, to 3D first person. It's like a crazy, super, super cool sequence. It was really amazing. It was really, really cool to play through. Yeah. And so I think that the way that this game told their stories in such different and unique ways was really, really cool. I really, really enjoyed that. Hey, sorry to pop in here and interrupt the video, but now is a really good time, if you're liking the video so far, to make sure to give it a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel a lot. It'll tell YouTube that you enjoyed this video and give you more of it. It'll also tell me that you enjoy the video, and I will keep making these. So go down, like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments any other games you think I should play. Okay, back to the video. One of the other things that I thought was just so unique about this game, and so actually like mind-boggling, was their use of the subtitles. Most games, if you have subtitles on, they're just kind of like at the bottom, they're just kind of static. Like if I put subtitles on this video right now, this is usually what they look like, right? However, this game doesn't go the normal route. This game does the coolest thing, where their subtitles are like interactive to an extent, where sometimes it'll show up on things that you have to walk through. And all of the letters will like dissipate and like fall to the ground, or they'll come up on like the wall right where you're looking, or they're gonna come up on furniture, or above objects, stuff like that, where it's really, really fascinating to see like how they use the subtitles to tell the story. I've never seen a game do that before. Like I've just never seen them utilize and integrate their subtitles like that. It's kind of hard to explain, so I'll probably put some clips in here just so you can see what I'm talking about. But I thought that the subtitles were like inspired. I thought they were amazing to look at. I thought they were so very cool. There's one story of a boy who got caught up in a storm and he died, because they all die. But the way that you tell the story is you're flying a kite, and you have to fly the kite like through the subtitles, and then the subtitles will activate and they'll like start talking. I think I am supposed to come get these ones though. No?
My father made him come, of course, but Gus stood far apart, just flew his kite and bottled up the storm inside his heart.
But it's like the coolest thing ever. Or they become objects as part of that, or they're the wind. You are the wind, you are the subtitles, and you are the wind carrying all the stuff around and becoming the storm that then destroys this child, which is really rough, but it's cool conceptually. Yeah, it was quite amazing to see how unique and creative the devs got with the subtitles. Like I said, never seen it in a game before. Really, really amazing to see and look at. One of the other things that I thought was so great about this game was the voice acting. And they got the voice actors for every character in the game. So like as you play through each scene or story, like it's a different voice actor being that family member. And the voice acting was just like really top-notch quality. Like it was just really good quality. It did such a great job of continuing to build the world and the vibes of the world, which was really, really awesome. Yeah, so just huge props to all the voice actors, because that was like really great to listen to and really tied the story up and tied the game in a nice way. Along with that, I also think that the music and the ambiance and the sound design of this game was so good. And like I know that they used a bunch of songs, so that they didn't compose everything themselves. Like I said, they had a song that's copyrighted actually, which is really rough for me. But the music and the sound design was just really, really great, and really lent to the atmosphere of the game. It was like eerie when it needed to be eerie. It was cheerful when it needed to be cheerful. The sound design was just really good. It all fit. It all sounded really, really great. They did just a really fantastic, spot-on job of keeping everything so neat and so cohesive Like, it was beautiful. It was just beautiful to play through and to listen to. The graphics, so good. For 2017, I mean, to be fair, 2017 actually had some pretty good video game graphics, but they hold up spectacularly. Like, they are so good. So good. It was a beautiful game. It sounded beautiful. It looked beautiful. It flowed. I didn't have a single glitch the whole game. It was incredible. No bugs. Yeah. No, I think what really strikes me about this game is, again, like I was saying, the quality of the storytelling, because as you play through, you kind of start to pick up on pieces of what actually happened to this family, what was actually going on. And I am just going to talk from my experience of just playing the game. I didn't want to go and look at a bunch of, other people's thoughts and views on the game, other people's analyses. I just kind of wanted to give you, as someone who just who's played it, my general thoughts. I'm gonna be so real. I didn't know what happened until the very, very end. I didn't realize that Edith died, and I forgot that it was her son who went there in the first place. So when that happened at the end, I was like crying a little bit. Because then you go on this whole journey with Edith, learning about her family and learning about kind of the truths that had gone untold to her. And then at the very end, you realize that she's not actually able to pass on any of that information to her son because she's actually still going to die. And so the question becomes, like, is there a curse, or is it just, what's it called? The placebo effect, or is it just everyone, because they believe there's a curse, they just kind of they manifest it. And so, like, things that maybe wouldn't have happened because they were freaking out about maybe it's a curse, or was it just that was their way of explaining off all of these tragedies? Just, it was a curse, things that are just natural occurrences. Death happens, accidents happen, and that's just an unfortunate fact of life, but that's just their way of dealing with that grief, is by calling it a curse. It kind of seemed like that's what it was for Grandma Edie, where she just didn't want to accept anybody's death, so she had to explain it off in some way. This family curse, she was, obsessed with it. And even the mom got caught up in it. She's like, all my kids are dead because of your stories, these crazy stories you make up in your head. It's because of those. So she is kind of still blaming the family curse. I made a joke that maybe it's just natural selection because they are the Finches. I don't know. Personally, I like no, I'm kidding. But no one really knows what exactly it is. I'm pretty sure game theory has a theory that the grandma killed everybody. It can kind of go anywhere you want to go with that, but I think that the point of the game that really struck me was to not focus on the fact that we're all going to die, but to focus on the life that we have to live and the time that we have, and every day is a gift to do something with. And even if you're gonna die before you hit 20, the time we have is still valuable. It is still worth living through. And it was just like, it struck me and I was gobsmacked. And then it made me really depressed. Yeah. Hi, Editor Sumi here. I was re-watching this and editing it. And I think that I missed out on a couple points that I wanted to hit on that I got distracted with other things by and never actually got to articulate. But I think part of what makes the storytelling of this game so fantastic and so striking is the fact that it does it slowly and progressively. It doesn't take you on a straightforward, beginning, middle, and end journey with this. It does begin with, the older ancestors and works its way into the more recent ancestors. But in terms of Edith's actual journey, it takes us kind of bit by bit around, and the story about this person reminds her of something that her grandmother said recently, or this person reminded her of what her mother said to her. And we get a picture of Edith's life and Edith's story much slower and more piece by piece, as opposed to just one, here we're going to lay it all out for you and you're just going to kind of walk it through, if that makes sense. I think also what made the story of it so beautiful was that there's so much to interpret and there's so much to discuss with it. And I think with really good stories, there's not always going to be every loose end tied. There's going to be some things that are left open for people to discuss, or for people to try to figure out what exactly they think it means. And for things to have multiple meanings and layers and dimension and depth. And those are the kinds of stories that when I think of them, I'm like, oh, you know, this has more to say than just like one message. So when I talk about, you know, this story tells us that we should not take our lives for granted, and that we should not keep death in mind when living. I think that is one aspect of what the story is trying to tell us, and it's my biggest takeaway from this. But that there's so much within it that I think is also to be analyzed and discussed and debated and all of that. And I think that the story and this game and the way that it actually has totally unreliable narrators the entire time. I think I talk about this later, but it is not clear at any point what is actually true and what is actually false. And that is up to us, the viewers and the players, to determine and to decide and discuss. I think is also a really cool way of telling the story, because then you have to try and dig deep and figure out what is real, what actually happened. And to me, that was just like a really cool thing that I haven't seen in a video game. That was like a really long add-in from editor Sumi, so thanks for listening. Back to my original thoughts. There are a couple moments in the game that I'm gonna talk about. A couple of the game. Wow. I want to talk about a couple of the moments of the game that just like really struck me. One was the story with Molly as the monster, and kind of realizing that this child is unwell because of the way she's speaking. Just she was not well. And it's hard to know to what extent the actual child was unwell and to what extent that's the fictional part, because one of the cool things that this game does is all of the stories have probably an element of truth, but are also very clearly embellished to some degree. Edith even mentions like she wasn't quite sure what stories were true, what parts of the stories were true. They all seem to be a little bit up in the air. Nothing's quite certain or set. Because, you know, I don't know if y'all know this out there, but little girls cannot in fact turn into cats and eat birds. They can't do that. Unless I missed the Earth update, they can't do that. And last I checked, kids can't swing off of swings and fly in the sky like birds. Last I checked. So there's things like that where I'm just like, it's hard to say exactly what's false and what's true. I think particularly with Molly, because hers is so crazy that I'm like, were you just hungry? Is that the true part? And then everything else was you just like daydreaming in bed because you wanted to satiate that? I still don't even really understand how she died, so that's another thing. But she died when she was like 9, maybe 8. So that was crazy. But like that was our first story that we get to see. And so that being the introduction to, oh, that's the kind of game that this is. It's the kind of game where all of this can happen, and we're just going to have to accept that as players. I think was just done really well. I also think that at the end, where Edie, I keep saying Edie, where Edith is talking to her son, her unborn son, she's kind of talking about how she wishes she could be there to meet him, and she wishes she could tell him all of this stuff, and this is your family, you know, do with that what you will. And while you're playing that, you're going through this like tunnel, and there's like a bright light at the end. And when I was playing it, it kind of felt like Edith was going into the light, you know, she was dying and these are her last dying wishes and words. And then it struck me, you could see it that way, and I think that's a valid perspective, but it's also kind of like the perspective of her son as he's being born, and that's like the birth canal. You could see it both ways, which I think is actually kind of cool, because if she died in childbirth, then both are happening at the same time, you know? It's cool and also totally depressing, and I kind of hate it at the same time. But I think it's that kind of symbolism in this game that really makes it feel so amazing and artistic. Like it is art. This game is art. And I think that should just be super clear. This game is art. Not just because, and I'll get into this in a second, not just because the writing is fantastic, but just the way that it goes about telling this story, in that nothing is super straightforward, and there is symbolism and things untold, and they take you on this journey that they never quite spoon feed you. It's very artistic. Now let's talk about the writing, because the writing was something that I kept coming back to during my playthrough, and I still think about today. It is so beautifully written. And I mean like the dialogue. The game itself is also beautifully written and beautifully structured, and I think all of it is meticulously done and gorgeous. But specifically the dialogue, and especially like the narration from Edith, is so poetic in like the oddest way. Like it was so poetic that I was like, it felt kind of weird to have it in a video game, because in my head, I don't know a lot of poetic video games. You know, I know a lot of video games like Valorant, Marvel Rivals, or Detroit Become Human, where it's not like poetry, but like that one's story based. But this is like, it was poetry. There were some moments where I was like, wow, the way that it's describing this place, the way that it's talking about this person. There was one that I want to bring up because it just like got me. Hold up. There's this one for Gus Finch, and it's, I think his sister was the one who, yeah. So his sister was Edith's mother, and she wrote a poem for him, about him, not entirely sure which one. And he's, in this, she says, the thunder sounded much too close and full of angry power, but all my father said to this was make the music louder. I wish that I could truly say I thought about you on that day, out there on the beach alone, just you, the wind, the sea, and foam, but I didn't until we found you. It like, as I was playing, I was like gobsmacked. I was like, they really said, like, that's crazy to I don't know, it's just like so well written, and it was so fitting for the story and for the game and the atmosphere. But also just like I wish I was thinking about you, but I didn't till we found you. With the visuals and with the context that it was in, it just felt very striking. And that's one of those bits of this game that I'm never gonna forget, because it's just so like, oh! There's also another one earlier on where with the swing kid, and his brother was writing about him, and he was like, you know, my brother said he'd die before he ate another mushroom, and he did. He didn't say it like that, but that's what he said. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's where this game is willing to go. That's the tone of this game, which was wild, because I went into it thinking, I went into this game thinking it was a horror game, and then when I was like, oh, it's just a straight story game, I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then, you know, I saw bright colors and, you know, this big forest, and I was like, oh, okay, so we're looking at like a kind of an uplifting tone. This game is so sad, and I was not prepared for how sad this game was going to be until I played it, and I was like, oh, we are not living our happy, funky, fresh life. We are living in depression here. Okay, got it, understood. But it took a second to get there, and then when I realized that this was not like a happy-go-lucky like story, it's bright and colorful and all of that, but it is not a happy story. I was like, oh, yeah. It's a beautifully done game, and I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah, so in terms of what this game was about, or like what the takeaway was about what the truth of the story and the family was, I think all that I can say is I didn't actually understand the title of the game until like a couple days ago. What Remains of Edith Finch is her son. And just the idea that like what remains of us is going to be what we leave behind. Not just, you know, stuff-wise, but the memories that we leave behind, the achievements, the people, all of that is what our legacy, essentially. That's what we leave behind. And I think that to say like, you know, what remains of us in this life is going to be whatever you do with it. And to focus on death, to focus on the end of your life is missing the point. I think at least that's kind of what I'm getting to be the point of this game, which I think is such a timeless message. You know, what you leave behind with the time that you have, that's all you get. You get your life, and then one day it's gonna end. And that's just what happens to everybody. And that's not a curse. It's not a family curse. There was no curse. I don't think there was a family curse at all. I think it was just a family who didn't know how to move on not move on, move on's a bad word, but like who didn't know how to process their loss and to keep moving forward. And you know, Grandma Edie was so stuck in the past, so stuck trying to live in those moments with those people and to try and fix it all, that she got stuck in that, and then she by proxy ended up dragging her family with her, which I think is, you know, what we see with her mom. Her mom kept trying Edith's mom kept trying to run away from her grandma, I think it was her grandma, and just like get out of there, and it still didn't work because she still was so affected. And so I think that a part of what the game is trying to say is that like by idolizing the past and continuing to blame like the life events on that curse, no one was able to accept life as it was, which means they were not able to do anything. I hope any of that made sense. That was me rambling a little bit. I made the notes and then I was like, I think those connect. I guess we'll find out. Let me know if they connected or not. Either way, I think that this game is probably actually one of the best games I've ever played in my life. I think it's beautiful in storytelling, visuals, audio, everything. I think that it's incredibly well made. So huge props to the devs. I want to know if they've made any other games so I can go play them, because this one was so amazing. I just loved it. I just loved it. If any of you out there want to play the game for yourself, because you're like, what is this girl talking about? It can't actually be that good. It is that good. Go check it out on Steam right now. Come back, let me know what you think. If you have already played it, please let me know in the comments what were your thoughts on the game. I would love to have other people to talk about this game too, because apparently no one I know has played it. So let me know what your thoughts were on the game. Honestly, like I recommend the game to everybody who enjoys story games. It's not scary, so if you like cozy games, it's probably actually pretty okay vibe. It's not like a cozy game, but it's not like in your face scary, so it's really good. Please go play it if you enjoy that kind of game. It's so good. I think that's all I have to say about this game. If you enjoyed this format of video, I haven't done it before. If you enjoyed it, if you didn't enjoy it, if you were like, this is way too much of your face, please tell me. I would love to change it if you hated it. But if you liked it, I would continue doing this because I love to yap about games. Also, like and subscribe. It would be super helpful to the channel if you would do that. Liking is actually really helpful because it tells the algorithm that you liked this video and it will give you more stuff like it. So that would be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great day or night or whatever time it is for you, and we'll see you in the next one.